Is big Death Rattle Death Knight gonna be a thing? Is Frost Death Knight gonna be a thing? Those are questions we're going to explore in this video as we jump into all of the newly revealed Death Knight cards here. Kicking it off with High Cultist Heron. This is an 8 mana 8/6 with Battle Cry. Summon 2 Death Rattle minions from your deck. They fight, which I love the flavor of this a lot. And of course, the idea here is killing off presumably 2 really big high payoff death rattles, maybe resulting in a nice board or some damage dealt. For instance, we're going to see this card in the video, Bone Chill Stegodon. This has a death rattle that deals 6 damage to 3 random enemies. So if you put this in your deck and you kill it off, could actually be a bit of a board clear, where High Cultist Heron maybe clears a board, and then maybe, you know, another death rattle leaves a body on board, and you kind of get a 2-for-1, a little bit of a board swing. There are, of course, big death rattles that exist in the pool that might be exciting for you. Particularly Death Knight has access to that one big old 10-drop guy here, the Weakener of Souls. This is kind of a 2-for-1 because you get both. Where did he go? What's happening? What happened? There he is. There he is. You get a 2-for-1. You know, you get Reborn as well. So not only do these kill each other, they then summon a different death rattle minion that you've killed earlier, perhaps your Stegodon actually, and then they also reborn. So you're left with like a couple 8/1s and maybe still like clearing the board, or maybe another guy that leaves behind a board. So there are, you know, some like big swingy plays possible. I don't think they're going to be like crazy game-winning plays necessarily. This is one of those where it might just feel like kind of a good play sometimes, but you know, it's not something you can necessarily rely on to win games or be that decisive or that swingy, which does become a challenge because you do kind of have to build a lot into your deck to make this worth it. You can't just like toss this into any deck as one of those kind of mid to late game legendaries that sort of just works. Those sometimes do find homes, but this you have to build towards. You have to actually commit to running big death rattle payoffs for it to be worth it. So can you turn this into a win condition with something like, you know, maybe an Endbringer Umbra to replay a lot of these death rattles and then get more upsides? I think it helps, but I still don't think it's enough to like define the deck necessarily. So how much out of, say, like a late game Death Knight package or a controlled package how much of the deck can you carve out to fit in maybe 5-6 cards for this package? Because you need to make sure you have enough death rattles in the deck, because of course this is turn 8. There's a good chance you draw quite a few of them by turn 8, particularly if you're just playing a normal deck, drawing cards, those sorts of things. It also means you aren't running low cost death rattles very often, which is something Death Knight historically has relied on. We are going to see a card in this video that helps you tutor your low cost death rattles. Like theoretically you could run this to pull the bad ones out of the deck. That's even more commitment to this game plan, and you just have all these layers of stuff you have to do to make this work, and I don't think the payoff is going to be worth it necessarily. I think there's just too many pieces to this puzzle for it to feel great. And you know, even the best case scenarios, it's a great play. It could be a game-winning play, just not a reliably game-winning play, not necessarily a win condition so much as just another chunk against your opponent in many cases. So I think for that reason, High Cultist Heron still needs more help. Maybe some crazy big death rattles come along to support this later, but for now, this one does fall pretty flat to me. So talking about the Bone Chill Stegodon here, this is a 6 mana 6/3 undead beast with death rattle, deals 6 damage to 3 random enemies. Do note that is 3 enemies, not 3 times. So this like can't go 18 for face, for instance. This is going to max at 6 damage to face. You know, that said, if you have a couple of these in the pool, still could be pretty cool for Endbringer Umbra, that sort of thing. You know, Umbra could pop off 2 or 3 of these and deal 12 or 18 because it's 3 separate death rattles in that case, each potentially hitting for 6. So I do kind of still like this in a big Umbra pile of stuff. Still don't think it's enough in combination with all of that to really be the basis of the deck, but it at least has some additional upside. Now, that said, you know, playing this on turn 6 often is going to feel kind of iffy, kind of risky, particularly with all these like tokens and 1/1s and junk out there in the meta. A lot of these 6 damage hits might just like clean up a 1/1 or a 2/2 and feel rather wasted. as opposed to dealing with the things you want, which are like the big 5/5 bodies, or alternatively, they might hit 8/8s and just not do enough and still leave you in trouble. This also doesn't have taunt or anything, so the opponent can often just like ignore this if you just plop it down and hope for the best. It is something you might need to self-activate, whether that's through the legendary or some other means, but that just adds more work on your plate basically instead of using this reliably. So kind of a weird stat line in that case. A card that wants to be used defensively with its death rattle, cleaning up the board in many cases, but nothing else about it screams defense. On top of that, this is a double frost rune, which we just have not seen any like frost committed decks do that well. There was a little bit of a frost not too long ago with that guy that like deals damage to frozen targets, but I think it was fairly fringe as far as I recall. And as of late, there's been like nothing basically at all. And that's hard. Like you have to commit to 2 frost runes for this, which might be tough. We're going to see some more frost rune cards in this video, but I don't think they come together cohesively as a deck. And I think that's just a big mark against this card and some of those as well. Could be hard to get that going, and I don't think this card is the encouragement to do it either. This is definitely not strong enough to push that archetype. All right, so moving on here to that Dread Raptor. This is a 4-mana 3/4 undead beast, frost, unholy runes, battle cry, draw a death rattle minion that costs 3 or less. Kindred, it costs 0. So assuming you hit the Kindred here, you are saving up to 3 mana here with this Dread Raptor, which kind of makes this look like a 1-mana 3/4. Notably, it's one that's hitting only turn 4 or later, but still quite a bit of efficiency there since it's also drawing you a card. If you're a deck that is running, specific, probably 3-cost death rattles and maybe not any lower, because, if you're drawing like 2 or 1-cost death rattles off this, of course, you're just getting less total discount. You might want a pretty tight fit there where you're running exactly 3-cost stuff to kind of maximize the output on Dread Raptor. Again, you could use this to tutor cards out of the deck for that legendary. I don't think that's going to be worth it. That's just another weird line, and you still could risk missing these and messing up your legendary. That's just too big of a risk. I don't think that pays off. It's more likely this is some kind of like death rattle swarmy deck that just wants to get stuff moving, get bodies on board, is running enough undead to satisfy this Kindred really reliably, specifically probably 3-cost undeads. I think that doesn't exactly exist right now. I don't know that is something I could build today in a compelling way, but I will say like the pieces on this card make a lot of sense. Undead is something Death Knight has very reliably. This is ultimately an efficient card, so there are things to like here, even if you don't see a home for this one right away. This card is still doing some pretty good stuff, and the Kindred is a large part of that upside, but I'm saying it's not too bad for Death Knight to satisfy that Kindred, unlike some Kindreds we've seen in the past, which I think are much, much tougher to pull off. So next up here is the Reluctant Wrangler, which you might say, hey, look, a 3-cost Death Rattle Regis. It's exactly what we wanted. It's also got Reborn and 1/1. Death Rattle, summon a 2/2 undead beast with taunt, which this is just ultimately a pile of stuff, right? It's a 1/1 that summons you another 1/1 and a 2/2, and that other 1/1 summons you another 2/2, which is perhaps a great corpse generator. In many cases, those 2/2 taunts could also create a little bit of friction on board. It is all small stuff going into the mid game. As you're getting into like turn 4 and 5, a lot of this does get cleaned up pretty easily by AoEs when opponents start wanting to use AoEs. Also just doesn't trade that well into 3/3s and stuff. So it is ultimately fodder. The other side of the problem here is like, yes, this is fine when drawn off of the Dread Raptor. That's fine. But it's not good when played on curve into the Dread Raptor because it is not an undead or a beast. So it does unfortunately not satisfy that Kindred, which it feels clunky to me. Like these could be a really nice 1-2 punch that kind of has dual utility. Instead, it only sort of works and supports half of this card, which I find like a missed opportunity. Like this could very easily just be an undead. I mean, maybe that breaks something somewhere else, but it feels like it would be fine to me and would really start to tie a lot of this stuff together. As it stands, doesn't really enable this card all that well, and I think there are other cards in Death Knight that historically have done this better. I mean, even when I compare this to like the 2-drop guy, Dreadhound guy, like that having Rush adds a lot, and it's still the same sort of thing. Sticky bodies, not quite as many as here, but also cheaper and has Rush. So it's like I just kind of like that better than this. So I do think this card could be pushed just a little to get it into relevance, but right now I don't think it's going to be relevant. Moving on to the Crypt map here. This is another one of those map cards. 1 cost spell. It is 2 frost runes and discovers you a frost rune card. If you play it this turn, also pick one of the others. So, you know, I like 1 cost discovers generally. I think they're pretty good. I think the fact that it's narrowing the pool a little bit is also pretty good. You get more reliable results that way. Frost rune cards, they're fine, right? There's plenty of cards that have a frost rune that are totally fine cards. So the results here are going to feel good. I think you'd be happier if this said spell, because sometimes minions are just a little bit harder to work with, but still just giving you some solid, good class card options. All of that's fine. The real problem again for this card might be the 2 frost rune requirement, because then you're really limiting the deck options for this one, because you have to actually build a deck that's leaning pretty hard into frost, which right now, again, we just have not seen succeeding, which makes me nervous. So a lot of this card is fine. That frost rune, though, might hold this one back. So on that note, we have one more double frost rune card here with Cryosleep. I do like this one a lot. Again, as far as the card itself is concerned, this deal 4 damage and draw a card, and then Kindred, draw another. So again, encouraging you to play frost spells here to activate that Kindred. Certainly, you know, I think dealing 4 damage and drawing 2 cards, that's a pretty good hit. That 4 damage could be like, just send it to face sometimes, because, you know, you're digging for lethal. You want to find another Cryosleep and find some lethal hits, find more damage. Sometimes just cleaning up a minion or whatever is going to absolutely be fine. But the fact that this is doing both of those things does give you some good options, and you'll find moments to weave this in a satisfying way. The problem again is you got to commit to double frost. Is that going to be a deck? I don't see that coming together right away. On top of that, the frost Kindred requirement I think is honestly kind of tough too, because even a deck that's leaning into fully frost isn't necessarily leaning into fully frost on curve, and there might be moments you really desperately want to use this card draw, because that's something that's kind of timing dependent. Sometimes you're desperately looking for stuff, and if you didn't happen to have your Kindred active because for whatever reason you didn't play a frost spell last turn, you might find yourself stuck. I think any Kindred cards that have specific timings like that are just ultimately going to be riskier, particularly when frost spells, you know, that's again a deck or a line we just don't have that's a proven model, particularly when you just don't always know when you're going to play this. It's not like you can say, hey, I'm going to run a bunch of 3 cost frost spells to play this on 4, because this isn't really a card you're probably playing on 4 all that much. So just some clunkiness here. I also got to acknowledge the fact that this art and name have like nothing to do in my mind with this card text. This is like a frozen dinosaur. What does it have to do with dealing 4 damage? I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe we're what froze the dinosaur, but then it should be like a freeze effect, not a damage effect. It doesn't matter. It's just a little flavor, little flavor loss there perhaps, but I'm sure you can find a way to explain it. You guys will come up with some cool ideas in the comments, I know. So next up we have another 4 cost spell. This one also is a frost rune, but an unholy rune too. It is Wave of Tar. It deals 2 damage to all enemy minions, and then enemy minions cost 2 more next turn. So clean up the current board, and then also limit your opponent next turn, maybe slow them down. Kind of a board clear and a Lotheb effect together here. I think that's fine. 2 damage is not the ultimate breakpoint for these sort of cards, particularly as you get into the mid game. I think 3 damage often feels notably safer. I do think the disruption's pretty nice, but I will say the disruption is another thing that has like specific timings that matter. Like sometimes you really want to disrupt key moments and turns from your opponent. Like, okay, they have a 7-drop that's like fundamental to their deck. I'm going into turn 7. I want to limit their 7-drop. So I want to play Wave of Tar that turn. But that's not something that goes really well with like dealing 2 damage to all minions, because that may be something that's useless as you go into that turn. The scenarios where both of these kind of line up into the perfect moment feel rather few and far between to me. I think it's going to be more like, okay, I'm playing this as an AoE, and like hopefully it's a little bit disruptive, but maybe won't have that like key targeted timely disruption, which I think disruption often does best. Alternatively, disruption with like Lotheb in the past, you know, you're using that to kind of seal the deal with your pressure. Use Loatheb after you've built the board, lock out your opponent. This doesn't do that because this is a reactive card. You're not using this to like secure a board necessarily. You're actually spending a lot of your mana on doing the opposite. You're not developing at all. So Loatheb, I think, also just more effective by targeting spells as opposed to minions that can also serve kind of a different purpose. But what I think that means ultimately is this card again just feels a little clunky to me. I wish this were 3 cost for a 2 damage AoE. That's sometimes a cleaner number. Or perhaps these two things that are kind of at odds with each other weren't paired onto a single card. So I think it's okay. It's still a card a control deck might run, particularly like a rainbow deck that has these rune alignments, or maybe a double frost deck that just needs more AoE or whatever. It's a possibility. I just wish it were tweaked a little to push it to that next level. And then finally here we have the Reanimated Terror Dax. This is a 5-mana 4/3 undead beast with rush and lifesteal and costs corpses instead of mana. So this is a way to use up some of your corpses. Remember, we got this quest revealed much earlier in the reveal season for Death Knight. Reanimate the Terror. You spend 18 corpses, you get Tyrax Bone Terror, which is basically a looping card that just gives you more and more Tyrax Bone Terrors. And the Terror's Grave dealing 4 damage. Like, that's all pretty fun. This, mind you, is Double Blood, Unholy. Some other Frost stuff goes with this, but certainly Reanimated Terror Dax can as a way to spend some corpses. And I will say, like, the quest line is definitely a grindy, long-term value sort of thing. You're just getting this endless 8/8. That might be a deck that plays, like, slower and more grindy, which, having Rush and Lifesteal is a nice reactive card to help you recover tempo a little bit in a slower deck, getting a 0-mana 4/3 Rush and lifesteal. It is also, it's just mana cheat, and sometimes that works in aggressive decks as well. This isn't as scary of an alignment for a card in a lot of those like aggressive mana cheat scenarios, though. Usually you want like the big annoying threatening guy that's like an 8/8 you're cheating out. A 4/3 with rush can still help. Like, it is still an extra body. It could cost 0, but it's not really something that's all about aggression. It would instead be like maybe protecting other assets by taking a trade on board or whatever. So to me, it doesn't fit quite as well into that aggro world. That said, at the end of the day, a 0-mana card is always something to keep an eye on. And this, both as an enabler for corpses and just a high tempo recovery kind of play, I think that makes this look good. Certainly one of the best cards we've seen in this video, at least. Yeah, and that said, let's go ahead and rate all these cards from 1 to 5 stars. High Cultist Haren is a 3-star card. Bone Chill Stegodon is a 2-star card. Dread Raptor is a 3-star card. Reluctant Wrangler is a 2-star card. Crypt Map is a 2-star card. Cryosleep is a 3-star card. Wave of Tar is a 2-star card. Reanimated Terror Dax is a 4-star card. And that is your Death Knight set. Not the strongest. I also didn't love the first couple Death Knight sets we saw. To me, this looks like one of the weaker packages. It's not even really all that clear on deck direction, which, like, philosophically I actually like. I like when they don't just pre-design decks, but when many other classes have full-on pre-designed decks from a power level standpoint, that leaves this in an iffy spot. I wish everybody was a little less directionless, but man, Death Knight might be playing catch up in that world and in that comparison. So let me know what you guys think. Does this like Stegodon Heron thing do enough damage to actually get there? Can Umbra really pull all that together? I'm curious if you have the same doubts or if you can see the lines on that one. Share all those thoughts down in the comments below. Thanks much as always for watching, and until next time, game on.